What's going on? It's Wednesday, May 13th, 2026. We have 6 days of severe weather ahead of us, according to the SPC or Storm Prediction Center. I think it could be 8 plus, but we have out to a day 6 risk zone. I also want to take a look at the tropics because we're just a couple of weeks away from hurricane season. We have very warm waters in the Western Atlantic and through portions of the Gulf and Caribbean. So we could get some tropical activity early on in the season, even though we have an impending, potentially super El Nino or at least strong El Nino. The waters are obviously warm. Taking a look at the sea surface temperature anomalies. I do want to start with, though, just taking a look at the current radar, our precipitation forecast, temperature forecast, and then we're going to get into the severe weather, and we're going to talk about the tropics. I do want to show you what happened during our last super El Nino back in the 2015 back in 2015. All right, so let's transition really quickly over to our live radar. All right, also, I've been really busy lately. I've got a full-time job, 2 kids. I'm trying to keep up with streaming, making content. I love making weather content. I love weather live streaming, but it's tough. And typically after I record these videos, I go and I edit them down to try to make them shorter and more compact, easier to digest. I don't have a ton of time to do editing. So my videos are just going to be kind of unedited now, straight through, which is fine. Obviously, they're not going to be probably as short, but I'll try to get through everything as quick as I can and cover all the important topics. But yeah, just to prove I'm exhausted, I'm literally drinking pre-workout this morning because I'm like, I need something to be able to record this video. But like I said, I love doing it, so I'll find a way. All right, here's our live radar. We've got storm system up in the Pacific Northwest and another one moving over the Great Lakes region. We're pretty cold out east, still pretty warm out west. If you take a look at the satellite, you can see this large low pressure system, upper level low spinning over the Great Lakes region. And this is why it was very windy in the upper Midwest. I actually walked out of work yesterday. I live in Minnesota, and I couldn't believe how windy it was. I didn't expect the wind, but this upper level low was bringing a lot of strong winds out from the north, from the northwest, a strong northerly, northwesterly flow out of Canada. And this is moving out east, so you're going to get a lot of these winds out through the Midwest and then eventually the Mid-Atlantic and roll really out towards the Mid-Atlantic and New England later today. And with this, we're getting a lot of cold air as well. You can see this strong or large upper level low as well moving into the Northwest. And so this is going to bring with it a lot of rainfall. And of course, this is going to bring some cooler temperatures up there as well. If we take a look at the real-time mesoscale analysis, just to show you, and again, take into account, you can kind of see our jet stream right here. So you would assume we have some cooler temperatures diving in behind this. And we do. If we take a look at our real-time mesoscale analysis, here we go. You can see all these cooler temperatures. Where am I going? We don't need to look at Europe. All right, there we go. We can see all these cooler temperatures diving in to the Northern Plains, Great Lakes region. So we'll be cooler for a little bit longer, but we are going to warm up. And we'll get into our severe weather in a second. Let me actually show you what's going on with the temperatures. Here we go. Climate Prediction Center temperature outlook. This is our 6 to 10 day. So this is really getting into early next week and then into our 8 to 14 days. So this is getting into early next week. And the following week, you can see most of the country, we're warming up. Still a little bit cooler potentially for portions of the Central Plains, Northern Plains, Upper Midwest, Northern Rockies. But for the most part, the country's warm, especially down there in the Southeast. Really, this is going to be through as we get into kind of the late 3rd, 4th week of May and then into early June. We're going to be warm, like I said, especially down there in the Southeast. All right, let's take a look at our precipitation forecast. This is 72 hours out. So over the next 72 hours, a lot of rainfall up there in the Northwest, a little bit in the Northern Rockies as well. Some of this is going to be snowfall for the higher elevations. And then taking a look, really not a ton of rainfall from the central or for the Central Plains, the Midwest, but a little bit potentially Missouri, Illinois, Iowa. This isn't much except for when you're taking a look at really northeastern Missouri, central Illinois, southeastern Iowa. We could see, I mean, even there we're talking about a quarter of an inch of rain. But you look near Columbia, Missouri, St. Louis, Missouri, and potentially some localized areas could see, I would say, a maximum of 1 to 2 inches of rainfall over the next 72 hours. New England, though, a decent amount of moisture up there in New England. So you could see portions of Vermont, or sorry, New Hampshire, we're looking at potentially, this says up to 3 inches. I would say localized 4 to 5 inches of rainfall is possible over the next 72 hours in some areas of upstate New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and southern Maine. All right, let's take a look at our severe weather really quickly here. We do have some severe weather to talk about, like I said in the beginning of the video. Our day one risk, this is today. A little bit of a marginal risk stretching from portions of southern Virginia up through upstate New York. Panhandle of Texas, marginal risk. And then as you can see, we have a slight risk for severe weather through portions of really the central to northern Rockies and, well, a large marginal with a smaller slight risk up here. If we break this down, no tornado risk today. It's still possible to get a tornado just because this just means there's not at least a 2% tornado risk. So I would still pay attention if you're in these risk zones. And again, there's going to be a wind and hail threat with these. You can see the wind threat, especially central to northern Rockies up here through portions of Utah, Wyoming, Idaho, and Montana. You actually have a SIG 1, which means we could see hurricane force gusts potentially with some of these storms. So make sure your weather alerts are on. Make sure you're paying attention. 5% wind risk, Panhandle of Texas, and then over here, Virginia up to, through upstate New York. This is our hail risk today, just the Panhandle of Texas, and then over there, West Virginia and PA. Let's take a look at our day two real quick. Again, no tornado threat. Doesn't mean there's actually no tornado threat, but there's not at least a 2%. This could change. We get into our wind risk, and you can see that this is a 5 to 15% wind risk stretching from the Panhandle of Texas up to the north and then the east through central Illinois. We take a look at our hail risk, and that's really most of Kansas there. And this is a SIG 1 hail risk, meaning we could see 2 to 3 plus inch hail, so some very large hail, so we want to make sure we're paying attention. Maybe put your car in the garage tomorrow if you're out here. All right, now getting into our day three, very similar. I mean, look at what happens when we go from our day 2 to our day 3. It's a very, very similar risk zone. So there's our day 2, there's our day 3, and then actually getting into our day 4, there we go. It's almost the same exact location. So Oklahoma, Kansas, portions of Nebraska, Iowa, Missouri. That's a few straight days. This is going to be Friday, Saturday, Sunday, where we're going to be looking at the chance for severe weather. And I know we only have this 15% risk right now, but this could be upgraded, and I actually think it will be upgraded. I'm especially watching as we get into Saturday, and then Sunday, we could see that intensity go up a little bit, and then especially Monday could be a pretty decent severe weather day across portions of the plains up through the Midwest, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. There's our day 5, and then getting all the way out into our day 6. There you go. All right. Now I want to go over, we'll break down the severe weather just a little bit more here. Okay, why are we expecting the severe weather late this week and into early next week? You can see we have a pretty amplified trough digging down into the northwest from Canada as we get into really Friday, Saturday, and especially Sunday here. It starts to dig, and I think Monday could actually be a pretty severe day if you look at kind of the amplification of this trough. There's a few reasons when we get this type of feature, we see severe weather. One has to do with the cold air moving in out of Canada, clashing with that warm, moist air of the Gulf. That causes lift. Cold air sinks, warm air rises. Dry air sinks, that moist air rises over the dry air. We get these thunderstorms. Also, you get a southwesterly flow. This is at the 500 millibar level, so about halfway up in the atmosphere, a little less than halfway up in the atmosphere. And that clashes with a southerly flow off the Gulf, so you get rotating thunderstorms. Some people think rotating thunderstorms or hear rotating thunderstorms and they think tornadoes. Well, rotating thunderstorms also greatly elevates the chance for damaging winds and hail. Why? If your thunderstorm isn't rotating, you can have a strong updraft, but eventually it's going to begin to rain, or you're going to have a downdraft, and that downdraft, that rainfall is going to fall on top of the updraft, and that is going to basically stabilize the atmosphere. It's going to disrupt the updraft and collapse your thunderstorm. If you have a rotating thunderstorm, or supercells we call them, you can have an updraft, the storm's rotating, and that downdraft or rainfall is actually falling in a separate part of the storm. So you don't have your downdraft or your rainfall falling on top of the updraft, so your storm can actually grow and kind of maintain itself over a longer period of time. But also, of course, rotating thunderstorms does elevate the chance for tornadoes. But that is why when you get this kind of southwesterly flow, when I'm looking for severe weather, if the SPC hasn't already kind of labeled it out at a day 3, day 4, day 5, but I start to see this kind of feature, this southwesterly flow, especially over fall or spring at the 500 millibar level. And then you start to see these shortwave troughs, these kinks in the isobar that represents some forcing under this shear. I know there's a chance we're going to get some severe weather, and we have a pretty decent southwesterly flow here as we move throughout the weekend, and especially Monday. But even looking further out, watch what happens here. And this is a little bit farther out. We don't want to really pay too much attention to what happens over 200 hours out, but this is a pretty active pattern as well as we get into next weekend. If we were to see this type of setup, we could see a significant severe outbreak. But this is now we're talking about 250 hours, 250 plus hours out. But we could end up with a pretty active end of May here, severe weather-wise. Taking a look at the lower levels, we're going to have some pretty decent jet streaks at the 850 millibar level. So we could get some pretty intense severe weather, potentially across portions of Oklahoma, definitely Kansas here, Missouri, maybe Iowa, maybe even up there towards Illinois and Wisconsin. And like I said, I'm especially watching Monday. You can see here as we get into Monday night, some pretty decent shear really from northern Texas all the way up through Michigan. Taking a look at what's happening with our temperatures, you can see as we get into the weekend, we've got that colder air moving down from the northwest, and this is again going to be clashing with that warm, moist air off the Gulf. So setting up a little bit of a bear clinic boundary here, some strong damaging thunderstorms are possible when you have this type of setup. Taking a look at our dew points as we get into Saturday, you actually start to see a pretty decent dry line forming here across portions of the central to southern plains, really the southern plains. And you can see that surface low forming as well. When we see you can see the closed off isobars here. So broad area of rotation. Again, we're going to be watching this area for thunderstorms. Really, all the key features you look for severe weather are present here. Now, I wanted to end this video taking a look at something interesting here. Sea surface temperature anomalies right now. We're very warm out here in the central Pacific, which is an area we look at when we're trying to figure out, where did my pen go? An area we look at when we're trying to figure out, what Enso cycle we could be entering, what Enso cycle we're in, especially the Nino 3.4 region right out here in the central Pacific. We're also very warm, though, out here in the eastern equatorial Pacific, and this can tell us how much shear, how much instability we can expect around this region and then out through the western Atlantic, Caribbean, and Gulf as well. Warmer waters here usually produce a lot more shear over the western Atlantic, Gulf, and Caribbean. This region right out here, really the western Atlantic basin. And with the more shear you have out here, typically the less likely you are to have a significant or major hurricane or any sort of tropical landfall in the States. So the waters are very warm out here. This is an indication that we're probably going to see a decent amount of shear across the western Atlantic basin. So that should help us this hurricane season. And I want to show you what happened last time we had a very strong El Nino or super El Nino. That was back in 2015. So you can see right here, the 2015 hurricane season, we were transitioning into a strong El Nino. You can see right through here. And this would be May, June. So this would be when hurricane season started. We were in a moderate El Nino, and then we got to a strong El Nino as we went through hurricane season. Really, actually, I didn't even highlight all of hurricane season. The hurricane season would technically be pretty much all the way through here. So we did start in a moderate El Nino and then all the way through a strong, or you could call it a super El Nino, ending that 2015 hurricane season. So what happened during the 2015 hurricane season? Well, honestly, not too much. We can actually take a look down here. Tropical storm, tropical storm, tropical storm. We had, I believe, we had two major hurricanes, actually. Neither of these really got too close to a landfall, but we had Major Hurricane Danny, 960 millibar, got down to, 960 millibar central pressure. So honestly, not really that strong of a major hurricane. It just barely hit a major hurricane. Max sustained winds 110 knots. And then we also had, honestly, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, but 931 millibar central pressure. That's pretty decent. 135 knot winds. So that was pretty decent, but where was this one? So that is 11. That was right out here. Actually, that got that actually went through the Bahamas there. Not too far offshore, but you could see for the most part, it was a pretty inactive season. It was a below average season. So named storms, actually 3 less than average. Named hurricanes, 3 less than average. Major hurricanes, 1 less than average. So the ACE index was very low. So it was a very below average hurricane season. Looks like we basically had 2 landfalls, and both of those landfalls, I believe, were tropical storms. So quiet season. This was the last time we were in a moderate to strong El Nino during hurricane season. And this is kind of what we would expect this year. Now, I've said in my other videos, it's not impossible to get a strong or major hurricane landfall in an El Nino. It's happened before. It'll happen again. It's just less likely. But I do think if you're going to get one, and if we're going to get one this year, it's going to be earlier on in the season. Our waters out here are very, very warm. They're above average, and that's the main fuel for a hurricane. So if we get something early on in the season, because we're not fully in an El Nino yet, we have El Nino conditions out there in the Pacific, but we haven't fully transitioned into that kind of El Nino pattern across the Western Atlantic Basin. If we get something developing early on in the season close to home, it is possible for rapid intensification, and suddenly now we're looking at a strong to major hurricane landfall. But if we have a slow start to the season, we're not getting a lot of development out here, June into July, I think we're going to be looking pretty good as we get into the middle and towards the end of hurricane season, just because, again, we're expecting a lot of shear across this region as these waters especially the eastern equatorial Pacific continue to warm. And it's really, really tough, especially as you get into the middle to late hurricane season, for these tropical cyclones to approach the states, because especially as you get into the middle to late hurricane season, most of our storms start to form out here as the kind of equatorial Atlantic warms, and they have a long way to go without being torn apart by this shear. That's what I think. If we're going to get a strong hurricane, if we're going to get some landfalling systems, likely it's going to be earlier on in the season, a front-loaded season. So let's pay attention the next couple of months. Let's pay attention to the water temperatures in the Western Atlantic Basin. Let's pay attention to what's happening with our shear. But overall, expect it to be a below-average hurricane season. All right, well, I appreciate you guys watching this video. I am going to mostly be posting Monday, Wednesday, and Friday now, and going live Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I typically go live sometime between 8 to 9 p.m. For an hour or two, just to answer all your questions and kind of give you guys the latest updates weather-wise. And we're going to be talking about hurricane season a lot now coming up, since it's just a couple of weeks away. I do have an awesome weather Discord, almost 700 weather enthusiasts in there. I try to keep updated every single day. So if you want to join that, there is a link to my Discord right in the description below. It's completely free. It only costs me money. It costs you nothing. I will also typically try to post at least one video over the weekend and go live over the weekend as well. So I want to at least, at a minimum, 3 days a week, but 4 days a week of posting and going live, just so obviously weather is constantly changing and I want to keep you guys updated. So again, I appreciate you watching this video, and I'll see you in the next video, or I will see you in the live later on this evening. See you guys.